Alright, listen, I hate to admit this, but I am really bad at making videos, and it almost feels like the longer I've been doing it for, the worse I've gotten at it. And that is something that has become even more apparent to me lately. Over the last few months, it has been super hard for me to actually sit down and make anything. And yeah, I have made a few videos, but not nearly as many as I've had ideas for or actually wanted to work on. I have been feeling lazy, uninspired, and I've just been running into this constant doubt about whether or not anything I want to make is actually worth making. And I recently watched this video by Patrick Tommaso, which almost made me feel like he's got a hidden camera somewhere in my office, because I shit you not, the stuff that he talked about in that one, about why it feels so hard to make videos nowadays, felt like someone was reading a transcript of my exact word-for-word internal monologue over the past few months. And I'll have a link to it in the description, because I honestly think that anyone who is feeling the same way should absolutely watch it. It was like taking the red pill of filmmaking YouTube. So you know what? I think this one is just gonna be for me. And if any of you find anything that I say helpful, then that is a great bonus. Alright, listen, I have had a bunch of channels over the years. I started editing videos back when I was like 12, and I just recently turned 27, so that's more than half a lifetime ago for me. None of those channels really had much success, but there is one thing that I vividly remember from back then, and that is how much easier it felt to create videos for them. See, the thing is, some of them I had when I was still a kid, making goofy gaming videos either by myself or with friends, and I was absolutely cringe back then, but I didn't know it, and so I didn't care. And so anytime there was anything that I wanted to make a video about on one of those channels, I would sit down and make it almost right away. It just felt easy. But then as I grew up, the self-awareness started to kick in, and creating shit just started getting so much more difficult. But still, even when I had channels as a teenager, it wasn't as hard to make videos because there was almost no one watching. There were way less eyes on what I was doing. And I'm gonna be totally honest here, I have my fair share of cringe moments in real life all the time, but I don't really mind that. I try to embrace the cringe as much as possible because I've kind of accepted that it's part of who I am. Plus, if you ask any of the people who are close to me, they can tell you that I'm someone who is very selective about whose opinions matter to me, so I quite honestly could not care less if anyone perceives me as cringe. And that's kind of the mindset that I try to carry over into my creative work as well. Like, there are very few people whose opinions truly matter to me when it comes to the stuff that I make. But for a while now, I have kind of been noticing, or I guess realizing, that maybe on a subconscious level, I'm kind of trying not to have my work be perceived as cringe. Like I said, I've had a lot of channels before, I have made a ton of videos, but this channel is the first one that's actually gotten any sort of reasonable attention from people who are not my mom, my sister, or any of my close friends. And like, I wouldn't call this a super successful channel by any measure, but at the very least, there are now a bunch of people looking at me and what I'm making. And I'm in this niche of filmmakers and photographers and video editors that is packed with so many incredibly talented people, and I follow a bunch of them, I watch their videos, I interact with their work. And so I feel like it's kind of impossible to not subconsciously start looking at what others in my field are doing and not worrying about whether or not what I'm doing fits in. In terms of the quality of work, there are people on here that are making shit that is light years ahead of what I'm able to do. Better visuals, better sound, better editing, better storytelling, better everything. So when it comes to making any of my own videos for my channel, throughout the years, I've had these periods where I will overthink everything so hard to the point that I'll scrap dozens of ideas because some dumb part of my bird brain decides that they're not good enough. And the past few months have been a perfect full force example of one of those periods. I keep watching what others are making and setting this invisible bar so high for myself that it feels impossible to reach, to the point where I don't even feel like it's worth trying. But to circle back to that video that I mentioned earlier from Patrick Tommaso, as I was sitting there watching it and listening to it, I was once again reminded of something that I absolutely know, but sometimes forget whenever I get sucked into the YouTube binge watching / overthinking oblivion. And that is that not every video has to always have some profound truth or realization or conclusion or piece of advice that you leave people with that changes their lives. And not every video has to be absolutely packed full of product shots and b-roll and clips that look like they can go in a $10 million commercial. For some videos that works and it makes them better, but not for every video. And lately, I've realized that I have to relearn to not overcomplicate the ones that don't need any of that stuff. Sometimes I will have an idea and I'll just want to sit in front of the camera and drop some cringe on the timeline, and that is totally fine. In fact, it is better than fine, because that, for some reason, seems to be the most difficult part of getting the ball rolling and then making more of the stuff that I actually want to make. And in the past, when I've had one of these periods of creative block or laziness or just being a dumbass, or call it whatever you want, there is one thing that has always helped me get out of them. And that is remembering why I made this channel and started posting in the first place. But I don't mean just being like, oh yeah, right, that's why I did it. I mean actually sitting down and watching some of my cringe earlier videos from back when almost no one cared about what I was making, and really thinking about what it was that made it so much easier to hit record back then. Like, what was it that was that much more powerful than the constant overthinking and comparison and doubt in my head? Now, I learned pretty much everything that I know about filmmaking, photography, video editing, and just creating shit in general from YouTube videos. And even though I might not individually remember every single video I've seen or who it was from, I am grateful for each and every single one of them. So at one point, I felt like I wanted to start making videos about the things that I find cool and hopefully end up helping someone out there with one of them, just like all of the ones that I watched over the years did for me. Or at the very least, just to share something that I can look back on a few months or years down the line and feel good about it. And listen, for me it was one thing, for you it's probably gonna be something totally different, or maybe not, I don't know, but either way, it's just important that you remember your own reason for wanting to create stuff. So I really just want to go back to making stuff with less pressure about everything being absolutely perfect, because man, it is honestly so exhausting and anxiety inducing to always worry that if you don't have that cool looking b-roll or clips of me in some beautiful exotic location with a voiceover of vague personal anecdotes or shots of me on some exciting, crazy project, that if those things are missing, there is somehow less value in the stuff that I'm making, and that it can't still end up being helpful to someone in some way. So that's what I'm gonna try and do. Just sit down and hit record whenever I have another cringe idea or just want to share my thoughts about something. So who knows, maybe in my next video I'm gonna be talking about some filmmaking gear that I like, or maybe I'm gonna be like dramatically standing on a cliff somewhere in Norway, or running on a beach in Iceland, or like doing backflips on the moon, or maybe I'm just gonna be right here in my little office in an Eastern European country that not many people know about, just talking about some shit that I find interesting. But yeah, I have no idea which one of those it's gonna be, and I think the best way of figuring out is really just sticking around and seeing when it happens. So yeah, I think that's about it for this one. I should probably stop talking, because if I don't, this video is not going to be 7 or 8 minutes. It is probably going to be 20 minutes of me just talking and going off on random tangents, but never actually saying anything. So yeah, that's about it. See ya.